So, it's been a while, hasn't it, since my last game review? Nearly 4 months ago at this point. My last 2 game reviews were pretty long and it took a while to make them. So I thought I would ease myself back into game reviews with something a bit simpler and easier to digest. You know what's a fun show? Dragon Ball. Regardless of what you think about the series, it's one of the most popular animes of all time. With popularity comes a lot of merchandise, including video games. Most of the well-known video games based on Dragon Ball are mainly fighting games like the Budokai series. Now I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not very good at traditional fighting games. I bought Dragon Ball FighterZ on sale, and while it's a fun game, I don't think I'll be able to go against actual people. I just mash buttons and hopefully I win. I also recently picked up Dragon Ball Z Kakarot on the Switch, and this is a game I can get the hang of. It's an open world RPG and I'm having a great time playing through it. If something as simple as flying around can be enjoyable, then you know you're in for a good time. But playing through this game reminded me of another Dragon Ball game that was going to be open world, but it never happened. Introducing Dragon Ball Z Sagas, released in 2005 for the GameCube, the PS2, and the Xbox, published by Atari and developed by Avalanche. You may know Avalanche for creating licensed Disney games like Toy Story 3 or Disney Infinity. I'll always remember them for creating Tak and the Power of Juju, however. Avalanche has also made some pretty crap games as well, like Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero on the N64 and Chicken Little. Dragon Ball Z Sagas falls into the lower end of the crappy licensed game spectrum. It was originally slated to be an open-world destructible sandbox, but instead we were treated to a linear beat-em-up. Kinda disappointing, but let's see how they handled it. Maybe it'll be fun. Well, I can tell you right off the bat that the game doesn't make a good first impression. The title screen and the menu suck. If you're expecting to hear the familiar Dragon Ball Z intro or at least some rendition of it on the title screen, then sad to say, but you're not getting that. Instead you get this. I'm pretty sure the whole game's soundtrack is original because I don't remember hearing this in the show. And the menu can only navigate with the D-pad? It's not that big of a deal, but why can't I just use the stick? The D-pad on the GameCube is so small and it sucks. This would be the point that I would explain the story of the game, but since this is Dragon Ball we're talking about, there's a lot to it and I'm not going into detail about all of it. So I'll just give you the basic cliff notes. These guys here, these are the good guys, and these guys over here, these are the bad guys. The good guys fight the bad guys. There are some altercations in between, where the good guys have trouble, but in the end they usually come out on top. Good? Great. Now for those familiar with the show, the game takes you through the Saiyan Saga all the way down to the Cell Games Saga. Yeah, no Majin Buu Saga. Sorry to disappoint you. So the gameplay is a linear beat-em-up like I said. The controls are pretty basic. The B button throws punches while the Y button kicks. The X button is used to fire off ki blasts, the R button blocks, the A button jumps and you can fly by pressing it again. The controls for the most part are fine, except for the lock on which you use by pressing the L button. While locked on you can't move around normally. Instead you're forced to do these quick dodges which I never found useful and was more of an encumbrance than anything. Holding down the R button to block most attacks is a lot more effective and easier to use. You lose a bit of ki energy blocking, but it's so easy to charge back up that it's not an issue. So let's talk about the combat. It's certainly combat alright. Now what's the most important thing about a beat-em-up game? Well, destroying a bunch of enemies in a satisfying way, of course. Fighting enemies in this game is more of a chore than anything. You don't have much in the way of combos at the start. All you have is press punch 5 times or kick 5 times. It sucks even more because enemies are able to block attacks. Now if you take a game like God Hand for an example, if an enemy blocks you can break their guard and keep the flow going. Here though, you don't get that yet. So most of the time you just wait and get lucky until there's an opening. Even when you do get a combo off, it just doesn't feel satisfying. Even when they're flying towards the background, I still don't feel satisfied. Maybe it's because the lack of sound effects, maybe it's because the combos you do eventually get aren't fun to use, or maybe it's because throughout the rest of the game, you're fighting the same exact enemies. Every enemy and every level you go through are the exact same thing throughout. Sure, they look different, but they all play out the same way. The structure is usually 2 normal stages with the boss at the end, and the last stage is a standalone boss. The linear stages don't really add anything new when you progress through the game. Sure, they try to add new things, but they're only for like 1 level and they're not anything special. There's a stage where you need to escort Dende, where most of the time he stands in the way of enemy fire like a dumbass. You might have to fight an extra boss or two, like in the case of Burter and Chase.
The king.
Or maybe there's an extra collectible you need to get, like the Dragon Balls. Oh yeah, how could I forget about the collectibles? Each stage you go through has 4 different collectibles you can find. First up are the red and yellow capsules. Picking up the red ones will restore some health, while the yellow ones restore key energy. If you manage to pick up 10 of each one, their respective gauge will increase. Next are the Z-Coins. They're currency you spend in the upgrade shop you can find during an action stage. Some of the power-ups are useful, like the charged Ki Blast you get first, faster recovery time for your key gauge, faster flight, combo breakers, and the guard break. The other upgrades, however, aren't that useful. A lot of the additional melee attacks like the throw and uppercut I never found to be fun or useful. Even the unlockable combos suck. I'm like 100% certain that you can go through the game with just the default combos and be absolutely fine. You only do slightly more damage with the combos, and the only reason for that is because you do more inputs with them. The only combo I liked was the final one because it was just a flurry of attacks you can pull off by only pressing 4 buttons. But even that gets tiring after a while. The last collectible you can find are Senzu Beans, which act as extra lives. You can only hold on to 3, so don't expect to stack a bunch of them together. Collectibles are just scattered across the level. The only annoying thing about them is that sometimes there will be a collectible out of range. Sometimes you'll find a Z-Coin in the air or maybe a capsule, meaning that you have to go somewhere up high and fly all the way back just to grab it. There really is no point of having these collectibles out of the way like this, it just wastes time. I think the biggest upset about the gameplay are definitely the characters you play as. The back of the box states you get to play through the story as Goku, Gohan, Vegeta, Trunks, and Piccolo, which is fine and all, but once you reach level 2 and get to play as Gohan, you're going to notice that Gohan plays exactly the same as Goku. Same goes for the other characters as well. None of the characters are unique and all share the same combos and animations. The only thing, again, is the way they look. I wouldn't be too upset about it, however, because you only get to play as Gohan once, as well as Piccolo. Even Trunks only gets 2 levels. Most of the game you just play as Goku or Vegeta, and since they don't differ from each other, well, it just feels like one character. Well, since we're still here, let's discuss bosses. And if you could take a guess, they all play out exactly the same from one another. Just run up to them and mash buttons and hope for the best in most cases, and fire off a Kamehameha wave once in a while. The only bosses I had to change up my strategy was with Frieza and Perfect Cell. You need to be Super Saiyan in order to damage them, or in Perfect Cell's case, Super Saiyan 2. It's not hard to pull off, it's just annoying, especially in Cell's case, because transforming takes a few seconds, and Cell can just charge you down, and you'll never get to transform. Just let me transform, I want to finish this boss fight, it takes too damn long. Also during the boss fights, the cameras just fucking suck, dude. If you move too far away, the camera just zooms all the way out, and you can't see what the hell is going on. The only other boss of note was Captain Ginyu, who blew a casket in his brain during the fight and just stood there. Oh yeah, did I mention this game is pretty buggy? I didn't run into a ton of glitches during my playthrough like some others have, but I'll list off a few. Certain enemies won't despawn after killing them, making it so I wasn't able to progress. Boss attacks sometimes wouldn't even deal damage to me. Vegeta having a seizure. Raccoon refusing to attack me. Goku floating backwards, Android 17 falling through the ground, and whatever the hell Cell is doing here. Overall, the gameplay was probably the most mediocre thing I ever went through. It was neither good or downright horrible, just uneventful. If you do beat the game, however, you unlock the Pendulum, which is essentially the story mode again, but you can play as any character. Even new unlockables like Tien, Krillin, Bardock, and even motherfucking Broly. Yeah, Broly is cool and all, but you gotta remember, every character plays the exact same way. It becomes more obvious when even the all-powerful Broly can barely take on fucking Raditz. Yeah, pretty lame. Guess the last thing to talk about is the overall presentation, which also isn't very good. This was released in 2005 and the graphics are more akin to a higher resolution N64 game. Every single character model has the same animations, and the special moves are all wrong. That's not what the Kamehameha wave looks like. It's supposed to be a big ass fucking laser. What is this little blast Goku shoots out? I mentioned the title screen music not being the DBZ theme, which is pretty lame, but the rest of the music doesn't fare much better. Again, I'm pretty sure it's all original music, which doesn't sound bad, but it's really nothing memorable. The only thing I do remember is that stupid piano song. The best part of the game are just the cutscenes that play before and after levels, which is basically just the show. Which should really tell you something. Just watch the show instead, you fool. Well, I guess that concludes our journey through Dragon Ball Z sagas. It's not a very long game, only taking around maybe 2 to 3 hours to complete. The main problem with the game is that you're doing the same exact thing from start to finish. None of the characters you play are unique from one another and are essentially just clones. Same with enemies and bosses who all act the same. The game doesn't get more challenging either. None of the bosses have any tricky moves or anything, they're all pretty easy to beat. I think this game has to be one of the most mad games I ever played in my life. I felt the same way going into it, and I felt the same way going out. I think it's best you stay away from this game because the only thing you're going to lose is 20 bucks. I'm just going to toss it back onto my shelf and probably never touch it again. Oh yeah, I forgot. This game also has 2-player, which I didn't mention because I don't have anyone to play this game with me. But maybe you can have fun with another person. Maybe. I don't know. That's the only draw to this game, to be honest. Other than that, don't bother.